on page 40, chapter title, Tartil, recitation in slow, rhythmic tones and making the voice beautiful when reciting. He ﷺ used to recite the Quran in slow, measured, rhythmic tones as Allah had instructed him, not racing or hurrying. Rather, his was a recitation clearly distinguishing each letter. So much so that he ﷺ would recite a surah in such slow rhythmic tones that it would be longer than would seem possible. He ﷺ
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وعلى من تبع هداهم إلى يوم الدين. Coming to the title, Sifat Salat al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, by the Shaykh Al-Albani, he says Tartil al-Qira'. Tartil, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded his messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَرَتِّلُ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, and make the recitation of the Quran in a way which is tartil. And the tartil is the thing which has been given to the Quran as a speciality, which is those ahkam al-tajweed that goes along with the tartil, from the ikhfa, from the idhar, from the qalb, from the gunna, from the idgham, from the idgham al-shafawi, idgham al-halqi, and so on and so forth. Those are attributed only to the Quran. So when the person reads a book or a normal newspaper, he would not do the tartil that is being specified to the Quran. It will be weird from the person to make such a thing. So this is only for the Quran and nothing else. It is not just the melody that is, but it's actually the Quran tartil. It means to give the letter and the word حقه ومستحقه, what is its right, and also what, when he is in that letter amongst other letters, what should be receiving from other characteristics. So this is the tartil. And the Prophet ﷺ, he would not recite in a way which is a recitation that is fast. He would recite it, and it's here it says the hadith, مفسرة حرفا حرفا. Plain translation as in literal translation, which is letter by letter. It means actually word to word. It doesn't mean letter to letter, but it means word to word. Kalimatan kalima. That doesn't mean harfan harfa. This word harfan harfa, it means word for word. It doesn't mean letter for letter. And if you want to listen to such recitation which is closer as a, you could say, to this recitation, or you could say it would be a good example of such a recitation, then the recitation of Shaykh al-Husari in this era is a recitation which is mufassaratan harfan harfan. And Imam al-Husari rahimahullah, he had in his recitation said a number of times that the Quran would produce its miracle once you give the recitation the rights of it and you recite it in a way that would bring out each letter and would bring out even what is behind the letter. So that is why Imam al-Husari used to recite in some of the places, lots of people embraced Islam just through the recitation, even though they did not understand. Like when he recited in front of some of the French people, so many people just took the Shahada because of the recitation of the Imam al-Husari rahimahullah. And the Prophet ﷺ, he would recite the surah which is shorter than the other. And I give you an example, like Surah Al-Anfal, which is much, much shorter than Surah Al-A'raf. But the way he recites Surah Al-Anfal, it will be even longer than one of us to recite Surah Al-A'raf, because he's reciting it slowly, in a slow mode, in a way which makes you, to listen to it and be happy with it. Now, which is better now? To recite, that is, with long recitation, making tartil, or to recite in a way which there is I wouldn't say very quick, but swifter, and then you're reciting more verses. This is a difference amongst the scholars. Some of the scholars, even from the Sahaba, like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhuma, they used to recite and to believe that the recitation, which is the slow, more rewardable than reciting faster. Whereas the Shafi'iyah, in their latest sayings, they say because the Prophet of Allah, he said that the more you read from the Quran, then the more you'll be rewarded. Alif Lam Mim, harf, harf, harf. So you recited more huruf from the Quran, you will be rewarded. And the Imam Al-Qayyim rahimahullah, in his Zad, he had combined between the two sayings by saying that we cannot say which one is better. Each one will be better according to the time and the circumstances. And he gives you an example of a person who's reciting slowly and a person who's reciting fast, yet he is giving the letters what they deserve from the recitation and from the tartil by giving an example of a jewel. So a person who is reciting slowly, then he's picking up a jewel which is very expensive one, because he's talking and he's taking his time in consideration. Whereas the person who is reciting faster, he's selling more jewels, but maybe those jewels are less in price than that particular jewel. So he says here, so we cannot really differentiate, we cannot say which one is better. It could be that one jewel that you have chosen when you recited long to be more in price than the combination of all the jewels of that reciter who recited faster. Or it could be vice versa, that the combination of those recitation of those jewels that is being done by the one who's faster would be more in price than the one who had picked up that jewel which is more expensive. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this one and this one has its preference accordingly. So some of the reciters, you know that when you listen to them, even they're reciting a bit faster, but you're enjoying it. And some reciters, you would like them to not to recite fast, so when they recite slowly, you enjoy them. So this one takes its place, and this one takes its place. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. But the recitation, which you should not be doing, that is the recitation that would chuck or crunch from the Quran what it deserves. That means a very fast recitation, a recitation without a melody, a recitation with keeping a close eye on the ahkam al-tajweed, and that recitation should not be there. And I gave an example a long time ago of a recitation of the whole of the Quran in 6 tapes, each one 60 minutes, 6 hours, the whole of the Quran. Wallahi, when I heard it myself, even if you are half of the Fatiha, you don't know if it is something the Fatiha or not, because it's so fast that our Shaykh Al-Albani, when it's been given to him, I have given it to him to listen to it. Well, he was on the phone, he said this is not allowed to sell such tapes, even if it's being made for the Huffaz to revise the recitation, because this is not Quran. Right, let's see how the Prophet of Allah used to make his recitation longer. And as I've given you an example, Surah Al-Anfal, he would recite it in such a way, would be longer than Surah Al-A'raf, which is much longer in terms of pages, but because he recites it in slow melody, makes it longer than Surah Al-A'raf. Right, so let's go please to the following, and that is following.
He sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say, it will be said to the reciter of the Quran on the day of judgment, recite and ascend. Recite slowly and rhythmically as you used to do in the previous word. Your place will be at the last ayah you recite.
Right. It will be, and he says, it used to be said to the Sahib al-Quran, the one who recites, the one who memorizes, the one who is skillful in the Quran. Iqra wartaqi. Recite and irtaqi. Irtaqi means like elevate, climb up. Warattil. There is a narration which is not authentic that the Jannah is like steps, and the person who memorizes the whole of the Quran, he will be at the end of the step, which is in the Firdaus. That hadith is not authentic, and it is munkar, as our Shaykh Al-Albani had indicated. But what is meant here, that the person would be elevated, not just as in steps and ladders, but in steps as in he will be elevated in terms of getting better position in the Jannah. And also, it will be according to what Quran he had read. Whether he memorized it or not, but he had read it. So if he read the whole of the Quran, and he's been keeping his recitation, mashallah, and the Quran will become like to you shafi' on the day of resurrection. Oh Lord, I have prevented him to sleep because he kept reciting me. So he says, فَإِنَّ مَنْزِلَكَ عِنْدَ آخِرِ آيَةٍ تَقْرَأُهَا. Right, so this is a great reward for the person who is reciting the Quran, and there are lots of rewards that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given to the person who recites Quran. For verily, any person reciting the Quran, his house would be glowing of light to the inhabitants of the heavens. So when the angels look down on the earth, they will find the house where the Quran is being recited to be lit, even though he could be having no lights or he could have no electricity. But because of the Quran, the houses that got the Quran, the illumination to the people, to the inhabitants, to the angels in the heavens will be exactly the same like for us when we look at the stars in the heavens. We see them glowing, so the angel would see those houses glowing to them like the stars glowing to us on the earth. So Quran, as I said, is the person's, you could say, zat. It is the food of yours. And the Quran is the one that would treat your heart. The Quran is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you claim that you love Allah Azza wa Jal, then you would read His words. Just like when you love somebody, you would like to read his letter again and again and again, because you love that letter. And some of them that even would put that letter on top of his chest and sleep with it. Because it comes from a person who's dear to him. And I'm not saying here to put the Quran on your chest and hug it, because it's not from the Sunnah, but I'm just saying that is to read the Quran. It shows you that you are closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A bit more, read.
He sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to prolong his recitation at a letter which can be prolonged, such as at Bismillah, at Ar-Rahman, at Ar-Rahim, and at Nadid in Surah Al-Qasr.
Nadid, na'am.
And their like.
Right. Prophet sallallahu he used to يمد قراءته عند حرف المد. This is supposed to be there as well, even though the hadith doesn't include it. That means when you have a letter of mad, what is the letter of mad? For those who do not understand the word of mad, mad means in Arabic elongation. And the letters of mad are to be 3. 2 of them, they got mad and lean, and one of them has got only mad. The alif, the has got the mad, and one has got mad and lean, the waw and the ya, which is the oo and the e, and the lean in them is the aw and the ay. Right, those letters, which is a, oo, e, aw, ay, those are the ones that you prolong. You cannot prolong like letter F. You can't prolong it. Or sh, you can't prolong it. So ish, if, id. So, but you can't say. It has to be those letters of the man, which, as I said, how many letters there are? There are 3 letters of man. Those are the ones whom the Prophet of Allah used to prolong. And he prolongs them according to what we read in the books of the Tajweed, which is that is the letter of mad is equivalent to 2 letters in terms of timing wise. So he says, Bismillah, Bismillah. There's an alif here in the lam of al-Jalala. Allah, Bismillah. He doesn't say Bismillah, it says Bismillahir Rahman. But he does not say Bismillahir Rahman. That's not the mad that the Prophet of Allah who used to do, but actually, if it was the last of the letters and he wants to stop on that word, then he would make this, which we call it tarji', which is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. He would make tarji', that means he would prolong it as the maximum, which is 3 a. So it is 3 ads, and each a is equivalent to 2 letters. So how many letters? 6 letters. So 3 ads. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Or when he stops, Nadid. So this is the recitation of the Prophet of Allah and the other, which is the likes. Right, now he used to stop at the end of the verses. Go ahead.
He sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to stop at the end of an ayah, as has already been explained.
Right, so the Prophet of Allah used to stop at the end of the verses. Normally he does not join the verses together, regardless whether that verse is going to be short in meaning, if it's not linked to the other or not. He will stop at that verse, at the end of it, and then he will start the following verse. So when we talk about Surah Al-Ma'un, he would say, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ, and he continues. Even though if you stop at the Musallin and you make ruku', it's not allowed, because that verse is linked to the following verse. If you said فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ and made ruku', you have just actually given a wrong meaning to what Allah intended to tell us, which is فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, woe to the people who pray. That means if you are praying, you're no good. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He ended up that verse, followed up by the following verse, which is that explains what Allah meant by woe to the ones who pray, the ones who are sahun, meaning they are oblivious, they don't really keep their prayer on time. الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ, another verse as well explains it, the ones who are showing off. So, but no harm if you are doing that in one rak'ah, to stop, and this is the sunnah. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ, to the end of the verse. So this is how the Prophet ﷺ used to recite. He used to make it ayah and ayah. For those who recite the Fatiha one breath, I don't know why they do it in one breath, because it's not from the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah. Are they testing their breath, or they're showing their muscles, or whatever it is, but it's not from the Prophet ﷺ sunnah to make the breath of the Fatiha to be one breath and link all the ayat, and not only that, go to the following Surah Al-Baqarah and Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. And I remember one reciter, he is from Iraq, mashallah, he is big, and that's why he got a big nafas, big breath into him. Brothers, come, you can fill up the gaps. Don't sit at the back. Brother, come here. Come to this side. Jazakumullah khair. Because, yes, Jazakallah khair. Don't let gaps for the shaitan to sit. We don't want him to sit with us. So the Prophet ﷺ, he would not say it in one breath. This man, I remember, he had, mashallah, the breath of reciting from the Fatiha, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, to the end, with 6 counts on the mad, which we call it Ard al-Sukun. On top of that as well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim again, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. All of that in one breath. As I said, it's not from the Sunnah. The Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to stop on each verse. No.
Sometimes he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite in an attractive, vibrating tone, as he did on the day of conquest, and when while on his she-camel, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited Surah Al-Fath, and Abdullah ibn Mughaffal narrated this attractive tone as says 3 A's.
No. Right, the note. You read me the note, please.
The note is on the vibrating tone. Note 7, Tarjih, explained as a vibrating tone by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. Manawi said, it arises from a feeling of joy and happiness which he sallallahu alaihi wasallam felt a good deal on the day of the conquest of Makkah.
Right. First of all, we don't agree with the word conquest. The day of repossession of Makkah. Conquest, you conquer with force, and the Prophet of Allah did not enter with force. Conquer, you take something that does not belong to you, and Makkah belongs to the Prophet ﷺ. He was exiled from it. Number 2 is that the Prophet of Allah, when he had repossessed Makkah, he did not enter like those people who are non-Muslim and they don't go by the code, by savaging and killing people and showing the triumph of theirs. He actually entered with humbleness, with his chin and his beard was stuck to his chest on top of his camel, and he was reciting Surah Al-Fath, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina, and he kept repeating those verses again and again with humbleness, and his voice with tartil. In that tartil, it says, Ya kana ahyanan yurajja. And the tarji' had differed amongst the scholars. What does that mean? And of course, the tarji' in some of the, for example, in the adhan, الترجيع في الأذان. What is the tarji' في الأذان? The tarji' في الأذان is not the tathweeb. Okay, the tarji' is that when you say shahada, before you utter it loudly, you say ashhadu la ilaha illallah, ashhadu la ilaha illallah, ashhadu Muhammadur Rasulullah, ashhadu Muhammadur Rasulullah. Then ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. That's the tarji' in the adhan. But the tarji' here in the sound is that the correct and closest one is actually that the Prophet ﷺ, he would make in a natural voice which ends up with 6 all the time counts of which is we call it mad mushba' al-ishba', giving the mad. And no harm if your voice has got as well in it the tardidat, because it says is it 3 or 6? And the correct opinion is 6. But if you listen, for example, to Imam Shaykh Sudais Hafidahullah, when he recites the Quran, you'll find in him his tarji' and his sound in his voice comes natural. Subhanallah, when he recites the Fatiha, as you can say in it. This is not really the which is the one that the people deliberately do. It comes natural with the voice. As we call it tardeed, tarji', echo, okay, of the voice, that it comes natural. We don't want to do like those people who are learning the musical instructions, dara, fa, sol, or whatever. I never learned them properly myself. I never liked music. And to learn the music, you know, fa, sol, those people don't laugh. I'm not talking. This is not real. This is a reality. They teach them before they recite Quran. They teach them the sulam al-musiqi, and then after they teach them the sulam al-musiqi, God knows they're going to stay in the sulam al-musiqi and go to the musiqa, or they're going to do the Quran. So they make the Quran on the al-han, which is melodies, and they got special melodies. They got, for example, lahn al-hijaz. Give me lahn al-hijaz. So he started reciting lahn al-hijaz, and he would twist the verses and will add. Is it both to me?
Yes.
MashaAllah, why? And he will twist and add harakat just for the sake of matching that what? Melody, which is particular one that he had learned. So they will learn al-alhan al-musiqi, and this is bid'ah. And I remember there was a debate by one of us brothers from the MashaAllah students of knowledge with another person who is saying that there is no harm to learn al-maqamat. Don't know if you heard about this word, maqamat. For those who recite Quran, they know what I'm talking about. Maqamat. Maqamat is actually special melodies. They learn them in order to make the Quran to fit these maqamat. So they will teach them, as I said, musical sessions. Music. And sulam al-musiqi, which is I remember when I was a kid, the government enforced upon us to learn music, even not in this country, in a Muslim country. So they were better to make us to buy those notebooks which have got more than 5 lines to draw these things. You know, I still got them in my mind. SubhanAllah, even when I was a kid. I'm talking about I was 8 years old, 9 years old. So to write that far, to write it where to put it, which it goes up and down. I remember that. And then they made us to make melodies and songs using those instruments like the, what's that thing? The 2 metal thing. Huh? Cymbal. And what else as well? There's one which is a big, massive thing. Saxophone, that's the one. Okay. Okay. So, and one which has got triangle and it got tick in it. Triangle as well. Okay, I was the man of the triangle myself. I was the boy of the triangle. Okay, but I never liked it. Naturally, I never liked it. I hated it so much. I used even to make sure that I'm not there in the class. Say that I've got stomachache or something. I didn't like it. Alhamdulillah. But anyway, they teach them these things and they implement those things on the Quran and they make the Quran to fit these melodies, and this is not right at all. The brother, a friend of mine, he had made a book, treatise, which he had gathered the sayings of the scholars regarding the maqamat. And he had made his master degree into that treatise that he had made, Jazallahu Khairah, Sheikh Malik, Hafidhahullah, and he had put that into, as I said, and he had gathered all the sayings of even Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal at this time. He used to say that this is from the bid'ah, to read it on maqamat. But to make it voice natural. Now, what is the difference between making a melody and making something which is incorrect, which is called tatrib? They say that the voice of the Quran, as long as it does not take a shape of a song, which is a song that you have known, which is haram, okay? And you're trying to fit that Quran into that song, and you start twisting into the med itself and change your voice, then there's no problem. And I'll give you an example. So, if the person had recited like in this way, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. That's no problem. But what's the problem here is that when he makes a melody into a particular med, and he changes his voice, Alif Lam, you understand me that? That, and that is not right. Mim, I made that 3-4 melodies in one med. But if I made it from one letter to different letter, no problem. But in the same thing, it's called a tatrib. What is a tatrib? Is going along with the verses. The verses talks about victory, you make it sound like victory. If it's to do with, for example, sadness, you go, sadness. If it's to do with Jannah, Jannah, it's fire, fire. That's called tatrib. You're trying to, and I cannot stop being astonished. And I can't remember that recital until now. I want to see him because I've seen his face is in my head. And he's reciting like this. Alif Lam. Wallah. Is he taking the mic? Or is he reciting? And he's a sheikh. Well, no sheikh reciting. I can't remember his name. And he's going, what is it? And I have seen the worst. So somebody sent me. Somebody is from, I don't know which area it is. Like they look like Chinese, Mongolians, or Indonesia, maybe Indonesia. And it is with orchestra. Have you seen it or not? Yeah, anybody saw it? Orchestra, Quran. And I couldn't know the Quran until I read the script underneath. Oh, it's Quran is reading. And the guy is doing like this, and there's women in the back reciting, and that is actually gone too far now. And this person is acting with Quran. I'm not saying he's not a Muslim. But look at to what level these people are messing about with the deen. I mean, I couldn't believe it. So he's doing it according to the Beethoven, things, music, and his voice, those what really. I can't remember the verse was reading, something like this. But anyway, and I know reciters, they recite when they get really drunk. When they're really high, they start reciting. One is called Antar. He's in Egypt. And the scholars have said his recitation is not allowed. Is this guy starts chewing the hashisha and he starts reciting. And when he recites, nice voice, but he starts chewing some of the letters. Well, he's not there anyway. So he starts chewing the end of the letters. And that is as well, the scholar said, this recitation, our Shaykh Muhammad Musa said, this recitation is haram. Right. Let's go to tahsin al-sawt, making it nice.
He ﷺ used to command making one's voice beautiful when reciting the Quran, saying, beautify the Quran with your voices, for a fine voice increases the Quran in beauty. And there's a note on beautification.
Go on. And I'm listening.
This hadith was turned around by one of the narrators who narrated it as beautify your voices with the Quran. This is a mistake in narration and understanding, and whoever declared it sahih is submerged in error, for it contradicts the authentic explanatory narrations in this section. In fact, it is prime example of maqloob hadith, and the details of the brief note.
This is a riwayah shahada, a narration which is not authentic, where it is the other way around, beautify your voices with the Quran. So the aim is to beautify what? The voice, not the Quran. But actually correct, the narration is beautify the Quran with your voices. So when you recite the Quran, you recite it with the nice voice. But if you quote it from the Quran, then there is no, because you're not reciting, you're quoting. So how can you quote? For example, when you do quotation from the Quran into your ruku'ah, do you do that melody? No, you don't do that with a melody, because you're making quotation. You're taking dua from that verse, so that's no problem. You are in the lecture quoting from the Quran, you're not reciting. So the quotation is no melody. And as for because the Prophet of Allah, when he used to, in Jumu'ah, he used to recite Surah Qaf, that means Qaf in the khutbah, and Qaf in the recitation. When it comes to the khutbah, it is without melody. When it comes to the recitation, it comes with what? Melody. So in the prayer, he recites it with melody. But when it was in the khutbah quotation, okay, it was without melody. And we have, alhamdulillah, witnessed that khutbah, which is only Qaf, but it was not in a masjid, of course, because people are not trained to know the sunnah. It was in front of our Shaykh Mashhur, and one of the trips that we have done, and one of the brothers who had made the khutbah, he just asked the Shaykh, can we apply the sunnah and just do the Surah Qaf? He said, go ahead. So he made Surah Qaf as the khutbah, and he recited also Surah Qaf. And we know that one of the companion ladies, Hisham, she said that I did not learn Surah Qaf except from the Prophet of Allah, from the number of times he recited it, where? On the pulpit. And she memorized it from there. Right, so the Prophet of Allah told us to make the Quran with a beautiful voice when we recite it, because it will be more effective to the heart, and that's definite. Always the melody gives it beauty to the Quran. The Quran, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, are we to recite other than the Quran with a melody? I'm not talking with the ahkam tajweed. Like, for example, the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The scholars are different regarding this issue. You'll find the tendency of some of the scholars of Al-Hijaz that they will make the person who is reciting for them quotation from the hadith, they would do it like this: زينوا القرآن بأصواتكم فإن الصوت الحسن يزيد القرآن حسنا. Like this. And our shuyukh, which are not from the Hijaz, they said this is the bid'ah. This is not being attributed to any of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam companions. So, and some argues it is not. It is actually, it's been there, and we're not saying the Quran. The Quran, ahkam, that there is a consensus amongst them that if you read the, for example, let's say, إن من أحسن الناس صوتا بالقرآن, that's bid'ah, they say, because you're giving ahkam tajweed to the hadith. But it's saying the melody that is acceptable, because that the Arabs at that time, they used to read as well in melody. That's what they say. But I have the inclination to say it is more of appropriate to keep the melody only to the Quran, okay, and not to keep unless you're making songs, you are singing in a wedding, it's different. But the hadith of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we leave it as it is, and it's even more powerful when you recite it in a way which is the normal way. As for the Quran, is Quran with the recitation, and the Prophet of Allah, not only that, he said more than this. Go ahead.
And also, truly, the one who has one of the finest voices among the people for reciting the Quran is the one whom you think fears Allah when you hear him recite.
So the one who is the best of the voices in the Quran is the one that when you hear him, you are having khushu'. Do you have khushu when you hear those reciters? Now the ones who are amongst some people, as soon as he ends the verse, which is not 6 counts, about 26 counts, 1,000 counts. So he goes, Allah, and then people start shouting, Dilu, Dilu, Ya Abdul Mu'ti, all of that. So that you don't really feel khushu' whatsoever. I don't feel khushu'. I feel this is hafla, a party, and people just, having fun. And the ones who are shouting, most of them are even on drugs, on hashish, on the dope, basically. We've seen them in Pakistan as well, isn't it? Egypt, Pakistan. They hire from Egypt to go to Pakistan and recite. And you find them as well, they're doing like this while the Imam is reciting them. You see them, they're dancing. And then they're waiting for the end to end, and jump up and down. Those monkeys, wallahi, this is not the Quran. This is not the khushu'. The khushu', as I said, when you hear the person, somebody said to another reciter, he said to him, Wallahi, you're playing with my heart. You are playing with my heart. That's how powerful he is in his recitation. You are taking my heart away from my body, playing with it. You are dragging my, whether I like it or not, my tears. You're pulling them, okay, because of your recitation. Some people, you listen. As soon as you listen to them, you are straight away into the Quran. So not because of just their voice, because that there is an element there, which is the khashya, that he's fearing Allah, and he's not putting an up and act. Prophet of Allah used to recite the Quran, وَكَانَ لَهُ خَنِينٌ. From the word Aziz, كَأَزِيز الْمِرْجَلِ. When you boil water, because of the what? The crying. He used to weep. Abu Bakr used to weep. Abdullah ibn Umar used to weep when they cried. So why? Because the heart is so soft. Any Quran comes there, they are in there. They don't really put an act. Some people put an act. They try to squeeze a tear out. If somebody is watching, so you can show them that there is a tears there. But some people, they try to hide their tears. That's like the Salaf used to do, that whenever the tears come down, they say, I've got a flu. I haven't got a flu. It's just the tears coming and he's trying to hide. He doesn't want to show that. And I remember one person came to me, he said to me, I go to the Haram, Imam is reciting some of the recitation, makes people, cry. They're crying on my right, crying on my left. And I'm trying to cry, but I can't cry. He's saying to me. So I said, well, what do you mean to expect me to say to you, go and get a pill from the pharmacy and you cry? It's not like that. It's not a pill you buy and then you get cry. No. This with sessions. This heart of yours, it builds up either salih, good spot, white spot, or black spot. Well, you choose. White spot, hasanat, Quran. That heart will be easy affected by the words of Allah. And if the heart is always say yeah, from kufr to disbelief, from fisq to da'ara, and always watching haram, then this heart will not then be having any response to the words of Allah regardless of what he hears. إِلَّا مَا أُشْرِبَ مِنْ هَوَى اللهم احفظنا يا رب. طيب. Also,
he also used to command recitation of the Quran in a pleasant tone, saying, study the book of Allah, recite it repeatedly, acquire it, memorize it, and recite it in a melodious tone. For by him in whose hand is my soul, it runs away quicker than the camels from their tying ropes.
This is a hadith which got a reason of revelation. And the reason of the revelation is really good to look at it because it will give us more of in-depth knowledge of it. This is where the Prophet ﷺ, he came to the companions and they were in the masjid and they were reciting Quran. Write that down there, Sheikh. So he says that we were sitting down in the masjid and we used to recite Quran. Prophet ﷺ came in and he said, Salaamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we have replied, Salam. Then he said, learn the book of Allah to the end of the hadith and waqtanuh, get it with you, keep it with you. وَتَغَنَّوْا بِهِ, and make the melody when you recite it. فَوَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدٍ بِيَدِهِ, by the one in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad. And I said to you a number of times, 90% or more of the oaths of the Prophet of Allah is like this: by the one in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad. By the one in whose hand. If the Prophet of Allah wanted us to understand the hand is not the hand but the power, would he mislead us by 90% of his oath saying by the one in whose hand? Would he mislead us? Would he say by the one in whose hand? No, because it would mislead us. If the hand doesn't mean hand, if the hand means power, he should have said by the one in whose power is my soul, instead of saying the hand. So Allah's got a hand. That's why he's emphasizing the Prophet of Allah all the time. And this reminds me exactly the same what the Prophet of Allah said. Every khutbah he says, كُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ وَكُلُّ ضَلَالَةٍ فِي النَّارِ. All bid'ah is to be ضلال. Somebody says, no, not every bid'ah ضلال. There is bid'ah hasana. Subhanallah. Prophet Allah says, every bid'ah is ضلال. By the one in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad. It's more أشد تفلتا. Tafallut means they get away. It's more of getting away than the camels. If you are a people, you know what I'm talking about. When it has been tied up in the uql, which is the tether, it tries to pull away and to leave. Subhanallah. And here it says min al-makhab, which is the ones which are like the she camels, or they want to see their babies. So these are the ones that want to get out from their being tied up, and that is the Quran, the same thing, trying to get out of your chest. So how are you going to keep it inside your chest? By revising the Quran. And that's why the Prophet of Allah said, تَعَلَّمُوا كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَتَعَاهَدُوا. تَعَاهَدُوا mu'ahada. And I remember Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah, he says that with this little time that we have in this time, is to prepare watches and to read them the books and make the hadith and all of that. Time is not really that much. You have to sleep as well, and the wife and the children. He said he used to keep a Quran on top of the desk of his where he repairs his watches. So every time there is a time where between a job and a job, he grabs the Quran and what? Reason it. This is called mu'ahad. Ta'ahad al-Quran. So he's all the time keeping in touch with it. So every time he keeps the Quran. And so now these days we've got more tools than that. We've got as well cassette players. If you are, for example, traveling, put the Quran. While the Quran is running, you are memorizing as well without you knowing. You're capturing words. Bit by bit, you're learning the surah. You leave that. So every time you have some time, keep it with the Quran. Alhamdulillah. وَتَغَنُّوا بِهِ. And not just to listen to it and you yourself recite it. وَاقْتَنُوهُ. And keep it. Have it with you. On books, in CDs, in MP3s, in all of that. In order to make sure it will not run away from you. In this hadith, we learned that the Prophet of Allah, he made salam to those who were reciting Quran. So this will settle the dispute. If you were reciting Quran and somebody came in, okay, and he said, Assalamu alaikum, don't say to him, don't disturb me, brother, I'm reciting Quran. No. Because this is a general hadith, afshu salam. Prophet of Allah said what? Spread the salam. So, Assalamu alaikum, we do it, unless there is an exception. And I'll tell you what the exception is. So, Assalamu alaikum, when you come to the people, even if they pray. He said, وَرَدَدْنَا عَلَيْهِ, we said, وَعَلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامُ. But in the prayer, how can I reply? Because I'm in the prayer, I'm not allowed to talk. But the reply could be with what? With gesture. Now here we find that the salam to initiate it is still there, but to answer it cannot be there except by the gesture, not by the sound. But there is a situation where there will be no initiation and no reply, which is Jum'ah. Very good. In the Jum'ah prayer, the person comes in, should not say salam to the people, nor the people should reply the salam. If somebody says salam alaikum, you should tell them what? Quiet. Should not say salam, should sit down. Unless there's no khutbah. There's a khutbah, you could say, or you could talk to the people if you want, if you need to do so. But if it's making the khutbah, imagine that making the khutbah, that every person comes in, Salamu alaikum, Salamu alaikum. The khatib is going to sit down and say, Salamu alaikum, ya khalas. You cannot concentrate on the khutbah. It becomes a market. And how many people are late in the Jummah? So many. Because of that, the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, he said, that is, man qala li akhihi ansit faqad laga. And he who says to his brother, quiet, and saying quiet to your brother, if he is not quiet, something is a must upon you if it's not the Jumu'ah. It's quiet, my brother, honest, listen, but you're not allowed to say that. You're just saying quiet, which is enjoining good. And forbidding evil is not allowed in the khutbah Jumu'ah. You're allowed in times which is necessity to talk to the Imam. If, for example, the people are outside and they need to come inside, best thing, so Imam, there are people there and it's raining, pouring rain, we needed to make a gap for the people to come in, you could just talk to the Imam, and the Imam will take care, that is a necessity. Not just like that Bedouin man who came to the Prophet ﷺ, he's a messenger of Allah in the Jumu'ah. For verily, we are dying. Call upon Allah to send us rain. What a daring Bedouin man he is. Stopping the khutbah of the Jumu'ah, the Prophet of Allah is messenger of Allah, we're dying. Sheep. And by the way, the Bedouins are very daring. Very daring they are. Jarihun. Companions will be shy to ask the Prophet of Allah. So maybe the companion, when the Bedouin comes in and say the words, the companions are saying, oh, what has he done now? What is going to be the answer of the Prophet? And that's why Anas used to say we used to wait and love for the sensible Bedouin men. Because they are unsensible. People are not sensible. The unsensible man to ask the Prophet of Allah something that we can't really ask. So this man, messenger of Allah, when is the day of resurrection? Imagine, Prophet of Allah has been questioned. And we stop. Khutbah ya akhi, when is the day of resurrection? This is the Prophet of Allah did not answer him. He's like telling him what? Quiet, don't talk. But the man is ignorant. Third time he said, okay, what did you prepare for it? That means he's a hint. I can't tell you when is the day of resurrection. And it's a hint. Don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to what you have prepared for it. The love of Allah is messenger. You are with whom you've loved. Last Anas was so happy with that hadith. You know this hadith is not simple. It's mighty hadith. You are with the one whom you have loved. Even though you're not going to do as good as him. So if you love Abu Bakr, you're never ever eat like Abu Bakr. What do you do? The whole qiyam, all siyam, come like Abu Bakr. But if you love Abu Bakr, you're going to be with what? Abu Bakr. Genuine love, of course. You don't love Abu Bakr and you put a t-shirt of Michael Jackson and hair standing up and say, love Abu Bakr. It doesn't look like Abu Bakr. You make your effort. You got to start here and I love Abu Bakr. That's not love Abu Bakr. So you love Abu Bakr, you do as much as you can. You are with Abu Bakr. And that's a mighty hadith. Prophet of Allah, we are dying. So the Prophet made dua. He never said to him, why did you tell me anything? Why did you speak in the khutbah? No. Sulayd, did you pray 2 rak'ah? He had no messenger of Allah. Stand up and pray 2 rak'ah. So, Imam talking to the people, no problem. Now,
he sallallahu alaihi wasallam also used to say, he who does not recite the Quran in a pleasant tone is not from us, not of us.
Can you just, do you have any footnote there? It's a big footnote, isn't it? No? We abbreviated that. Alhamdulillah, which is not really part of our topic, is to do refutation of some of the scholars who had made an elaboration or criticism of the Shaykh Al-Albani, so we're not going to read that. Okay? لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَا لَمْ يَتَغَنَّ بِالْقُرْآنِ. He's not from us. He's not from us who does not recite the Quran with melody. And that's a very powerful statement. ليس منا من لم يوقر كبيرا ويرحم صغيرا ويعرف لعلينا حقا. He's not from us, the one who does not respect his elders, have mercy upon the youngsters, and knows the rights of his scholars. ليس منا من غش من فليس منا. He who cheats is not from us. So this word is very strong, and it's raising the level of this is to be like a major sin. ليس منا is not from us. من غش فليس منا. So if you recite the Quran deliberately without a melody, you are not from us. So you recite the Quran, it has to be with a melody, regardless of how good your melody is, but you try your best. Right, so the Prophet ﷺ, well, let's just talk about as well some of the Quran's power. Allah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he says, Man qara al-Quran, he recites the Quran, he will never be returned back to the age of senile. You know the age of senile? Senility is the person when he reaches the age of old age and he doesn't know what he's saying, what he's doing. If you recite the Quran, you're not going to go to that age. Because he said, for verily, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. We have sent him back to the age of lowest, except for those who believe. Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ قَرَأُوا الْقُرْآنَ. Except for the ones who recited the Quran, and this is authentic. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu anhu wa ardah, he says that the Masjid, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, had entered the Masjid, and he was between Abu Bakr and Umar. Allah ibn Mas'ud was praying, and he was reciting Surah An-Nisa, and he went to the verse 100, and then Abdullah ibn Mas'ud started making dua. So this is not obligatory prayer, it's like his what? Nafil prayer. And he was making the dua, and the Prophet of Allah is saying, and I'm going to come here what the Prophet of Allah is saying, Is'al tu'ta, ask, and Allah will grant you. Then he said, well, I'm going to come here that, من أحب أن يقرأ القرآن ضبطا طريا كما أنزل فليقرأه على قراءة ابن أم عبد. He who wants to recite the Quran the way it is being sent down, the way it's being given to me by Jibreel alayhi salam, fresh, then let him recite it according to the recitation of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. And we have the recitation of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud handed down to us by authentic teachings. Just like the recitation of, for example, Al-Husayn. فَلَمَّا أَصْبَحَ غَدًا إِلَيْهِ. When Abu Bakr went to him in the morning to give him the glad tidings, and he said to him, what did you ask yesterday when the Prophet of Allah said, come on, ask, and you'll be granted. So he said, I have asked Allah Azza wa Jal, إِيمَانًا لَا يَرْتَدْ وَنَعِيمًا لَا يَنْفَدْ. That is Iman which will not bounce back, will not go to kufr, and a blessing which will not finish, and وَمُرَافَقَةْ مُحَمَّدْ فِي أَعْلَى جَنَّةِ الْخُلْدِ, and to accompany the Prophet of Allah in the highest of Jannat al-Khuld. And this has been granted to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Umar came afterwards and he said, wanted to him to tell him the glad tidings. He said to him, sorry, Abu Bakr was first. He said, may Allah have mercy on Abu Bakr. And every time I raise him to do good, he's always first. He always first. This is the race and the competition between the companions. It's not to do with how much money you can maximize their wealth, or which one is going to win a chair in the parliament, but it's actually who's going to be better in the deen. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also regarding the Quran, he says, the Quran on the day of resurrection, he will come as a man, and he would say to his reciter, do you know me? I am the one who used to make you wake up all night. I am the one to make you thirsty. And every merchant, every tajir is behind his business. And I am for you today. And that is when Allah Azza wa Jalla will give him the dominion in his right and the immortality in his left. And the crown will be put on top of his head. The crown of waqar, the crown of glory. And his parents will be giving 2 garments that even in the whole dunya, to purchase such a garment, it will not be equivalent. And they would say, oh Lord, how, parents, how can we have this? And Allah would say to them, because of your being teaching your son the Quran. For verily, the one who is memorized the Quran on the day of resurrection, it would be said to him, اقرأ وارتقي, recite and elevate, and ورتل كما كنت ترتل في الدنيا, you will be reciting according to what you've been reciting in the dunya. For verily, your place is where the last verse that you used to recite. Right, this is another hadith also from the Prophet of Allah. Prophet ﷺ, he said, when he recited the Quran, and he had implemented it, his parents would be given the crown of light of the sun. He'll be given the crown which is the light of the sun. and his parents will be given the garment that we talked about. Alqamah ibn Qais, the student of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said, I was a man with got beautiful voice. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud used to send to me to come and recite for him. And every time I finished my recitation, he would say to me, Zidna min hada. Come on, I want more of that. You know, the people when they go to the singers, come on, I want to listen to the songs, subhanAllah. This Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, come on, I want to hear that recitation. فَإِنِّي سَمِعْتُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. I've heard the Prophet of Allah sallallahu said, حَسَنُ الصَّوْتِ أو حُسْنُ الصَّوْتِ زِينَةُ القرآن. The beautiful voice is the beauty of the Quran, and this is authentic also. So here Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, number of times he made Alqamah ibn Qais to recite in front of him, even Abu Musa, his student, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, to lead him in the prayer. And in terms of the Quran, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is one of the four. The Prophet of Allah said, take your Quran from four people, one of them Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He's a sheikh of the recitation. But yet he wanted to hear it from what? Somebody else. His voice is nice, but it's not as nice, for example, for Alqamah, or as nice as Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. He's got the flute of Dawood alayhi salam. Right, go ahead.
Allah does not listen to anything as He listens, in some versions, as He is listening to a prophet with a nice voice, and in one version with a nice melody, who recites the Quran in pleasant tone, loudly. And tone has a note.
Go on.
Mundhiri said, Taghanna does mean to recite in a pleasant voice. And Sufyan bin U'ayna and others took the view that it is to do with istighna.
Which is not right. Go on, read.
That is, letting the Quran make one dispense with worldly pleasure. But this is rejected.
Right, so this is to show you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He did not listen to anything what He had listened to a prophet who's got a nice voice, reciting the words of His, which is the Quran, Taghanna Quran, and making it loud. And that to show you that the immaculate place of a person who recites the Quran with a nice melody. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given some of the people better voice than others. And this is natural, like when the adhan came, and the one who saw it in his dreams, Abdullah ibn Zayd. But the one who was being given the go-ahead to give the adhan, it was not the one who'd seen the vision, and that is Bilal radiallahu anhu. The Prophet of Allah, upon hearing the adhan, he said, go on, teach it to Bilal, for Bilal is anda sawtan mink. He had a better voice than you are. So he had the priority. So the person who has got the priority to make the adhan is the one who got a nice melody in the adhan. You don't want to make an adhan that would terrorize you. You want to make an adhan to attract you. Because some of the adhan, people, they make the adhan, you want to put your hands on your ears because he is actually shouting. He's not making an adhan with a melody. So if you have a very bad voice, please step down, stop. Don't put yourself into the... That's not right. They give it to the people who got nice, because this is said, the voice is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, you could train yourself as well. Voice sometimes can be what? Can be adapted. Sometimes it's being chipped in you, and some of it is with adaptation. Even those people chipped in them, they would even enhance it. By the practice all the time, it will become nicer. And those who has not a good voice at all, okay, their voice is really, it is not, some of the people that try still, listen to that sheikh, please, maybe get that melody, listen to that sheikh. He's not coming up with any melody. He's trying, inshallah, but his voice is not really relaxing voice, and you want to listen to it for a long time, because you're going to be dizzy. But some of the recitation, you want to hear it all day and all night. Now,
He sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu, had you seen me while I was listening to your recitation yesterday, you have surely been given one of the musical wind instruments of the family of Dawood alayhi salam. So Abu Musa radiallahu anhu said, had I known you were there, I would have made my voice more pleasant and emotional for you.
Prophet ﷺ passed by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, and Musa al-Ash'ari was not aware, and he was listening to his recitation. So he said to him, after he heard that recitation, you have been given mizmar. And mizmar is the beautiful voice. And
the note on the wind instrument, the musical instrument. The scholars have said that the musical instruments here means a beautiful voice, and that the family of Dawood ﷺ refers to Dawood himself. The family of so and so can be specifically for so and so only. And Dawood ﷺ had an extremely beautiful voice, and this is mentioned in Nawawi in his commentary of Sahih Muslim.
it's mentioned in the Quran that Dawood ﷺ, when he used to sing, everything would sing along with him. The birds, the mountains, how beautiful voice he has. So Dawood ﷺ, he had very beautiful voice. And the Prophet ﷺ, he's been given the revelation to say that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he's like some of that voice, a branch of that voice, is in his throat or in his way of recitation, just like Dawood alayhi salam. And Abu Musa was reciting his normal recitation, his Messenger of Allah. If I knew that you were there, I would have made it even beautiful. We could learn from this that there's no showing off. If you have seen somebody and you want to beautify your recitation for the sake of, affecting more, it's not because you wanted to say, wow, what a reciter you are, but you are after to make it, better for him. Because definitely when you recite on your own, it's different from when you recite and lead the people in the prayer. Totally different. When you recite at home, maybe you've got a nice voice, but you're not going to do it as beautiful as when you are what? Leading the people. It's natural. So, if Abu Musa al-Ash'ari was reciting on his own, it would be different from reciting when people behind him, or when he sees the Prophet of Allah is there. He would make it even more, and the Prophet of Allah's presence as well would affect him, and will reflect in his recitation. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that we're going to show off. Okay? It doesn't mean showing off. Right. By this, we finish here, and we will go to the questions. And I don't want to give you more, I don't want to give you headaches, basically. Right, so we know that now we are allowed to say salam and to return the salam on the people who are reciting the Quran. And I'm saying this because there was a fight that took place between an old man who was reciting the Quran, somebody who said salam. You said to him, why you have interrupted in my Quran? There is no salam when I am reading the Quran. And then there's a fatwa given to the Lajna regarding this issue, and the Lajna settled the issue, said, no, there is salam. There is a salam. Okay. Have any questions? Can
you repeat a ayah from surah numerous times?
Can I repeat an ayah in the surah numerous times? Yes, you can. Like we have said, that the Prophet ﷺ, he repeated one verse. Not just in that surah, in that rak'ah, in that second rak'ah, and in the ruku, and in the sujood, meaning that's dua. Yes? So, no problem. But, if you are leading the people, I would not really do that, because then the people start what? Making fatih on you, which is the next fatwa following tatwa, which is that? Correcting the imam. They start correcting you. Because they think that you have, like when the CD goes, stops. What happened to you? They want to give you a push to read the following verse. So you have to watch. But no problem if you repeat the verse. For repeating the verse and repeating the surah, we have said that. But when you are leading the people, you have to take extra care. The Prophet ﷺ, when he's a prophet, he repeated the surah in the 2 rak'ah, Surah Al-Zalzala. And the companions, they said, brother, we don't know, did he forget? Did he forget? Okay, or he deliberately did that? Of course, he did not forget, because if he forgot, then the revelation would come to him to tell the people. So it became no problem to recite the surah twice. Means in the first rak'ah, repeat it again in the second rak'ah. But the companions themselves, this is a prophet, and the dispute will be settled as soon as it's a prophet. But imagine he's not a prophet. So that is why, rightly so, the Sheikh, Hussein al-Sheikh, in the Medina, and I was there, when he made the Jum'ah, I don't know, the Jum'ah was it? Or the different day. But it was in the Fajr, and before we started, which is the very first time, he said, I'm going to recite Surah Al-Zilzal, in both rak'ah before he started. This is very strange for them. It doesn't happen. Why is it that? Because these people behind them are not like companions. Then accept that. They might say Subhanallah. Oh, they're going to go out, oh, he made a mistake, he recited the surah twice. Yeah, and there will be conflict. Yeah, he forgot. So he started a dispute from the beginning. He said, I'm going to recite it in the first and the second rak'ah. So they knew that the people, he's not going to be making a mistake. He did deliberately, he had done surah as exam in the both. Now, both. Follow.
What do you say to the mu'adhin who hasn't got a good voice and telling him to step down, etc.? If he says that he wants to carry on because he wants to gain a reward?
You don't say anything to the mu'adhin if you're not from the administration. The mu'adhin is not supposed to be dealt with except with the administration. No one is to step to the mu'adhin, please sit down, brother, because you've got a horrible voice. That's not right. But you could really present that right way to the person who is in charge. But if you are in a mu'adhin who is taking adhan once, that's different. Take a mu'adhin. Mu'adhin, ya akhi, barakallahu feek, is the one who is being given the job of mu'adhin. Not a person who just, it's the time for the prayer, and we are two people. Brother, your voice nice or not nice? No, anyway, the adhan. So please differentiate between mu'adhin and person calling the adhan. Mu'adhin has been given the job to make the adhan. And that is what. And as for a mu'adhin, we don't want to make the adhan for himself or for to his family, no problem. So, I wouldn't really recommend if that person want to approach such a person and say to him, you've got a horrible voice. I wouldn't recommend that because it will be boycotting between the two. Okay? We did have in one of the masajid, I'm not going to say the masjid, a mu'adhin that I want to get rid of. I can't. His voice, it makes you actually, if you are a revert, you might think to leave Islam. That's how bad it is. Really bad. So, okay? Wallahi, the mu'adhin, when he calls the adhan and it's proper, your tears in your eyes. The mu'adhin, the proper one. He plays with your heart with his adhan. Powerful. And I remember we went to the haram of the Mecca. I had somebody with me for the first time. When the adhan has been called, and she's one of the powerful speakers, he was in tears straight away. Because the adhan's got power. SubhanAllah. Shayateen will fly away. Run. Now, follow that.
Regarding the hadith about reading and sending, as you used to in the dunya of the Quran, that means someone recite more slower, he will have more ascension.
Allahu A'lam. Yes. Allahu A'lam. So the recitation of the person who is better, if he recites slowly, but he intends to read more, no problem. But he's not reciting slowly and he's stopping. So if a person recites the Quran, all of it takes him a year, and a person takes him a month. So that person who's taking a year, he's doing his, slowly, but he's taking his time. He will be reciting, he will be, elevating on the day of resurrection according to what he has intended as well. Alright? So that depends. And each person, he knows for himself which is better for him. And that is why Umar al-Khattab, when he in Taraweeh, is to employ those to read the Taraweeh according to the recitation. So the one who's to recite fast, he gives him 30 verses. The one who recites medium, 20 verses. The one who recites slowly, he'll give him 10 verses. And each one, he has his own pace. Because it's been built into him. I, for myself, I can't read fast. Like the ones who read hadar. I can't. I couldn't do long or mutawassal. But some people do hadar, they can't do the long ones. So it's been, given. This is Allah, from Allah's concession. Allah, alhamdulillah, giving you that, as long as you make the recitation properly. Some people read faster, some people slower, and that's how Umar Khattab used to employ them. You are slow, only 10 verses. You are a bit medium, 15 verses. You are long, 30 verses, 40 verses. As in the hadith. Now. Fadal.
Yeah, what are these about elevating on the day of judgment? Is it just reserved for, or is it for everyone, or is it just reserved for Hafaz, or is what Hafaz that more you memorize, higher you're going to be? So is that hadith reserved only for Hafaz, or is it?
Okay. Is it for the Hafaz or is it not for the Hafiz? Definitely is better than the Hafiz. But we cannot deprive the non-Hafaz from their glory of this hadith. Because some of us, they cannot memorize as good as the other ones. So your old men, your old father, your old mother can't memorize. They're past that age. But they trying their best. I know an uncle, Wallahi, he comes from the Dhuhr, he leaves by the Maghrib. Every time, come to the Dhuhr, up to the Maghrib. Regardless whether it's summertime, it's really long, or winter time is short. Keep reciting. He non-stop keeps reciting. He's not having, and his recitation is not that good. When he wants to read, he loves the Quran, and keep reciting. So he's bound to die maybe when he's reciting the Quran. Because it's time, all that in the Quran. Non-stop. No. So we can't deprive the ones who are not Huffaz. Jazakallah for that question. Anybody want to ask a question as well? Or one who would ask a question? Fadal. How is our uncle?
He's okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Trading in gold.
Mm.
Is it different than a long time? Because gold used to be related to the money.
So what's the question? Trading gold is haram. Trading in gold is haram because you are buying gold with paper money. Because of that, we say you only buy what you need, but you don't trade in gold. الذهب بالذهب, not ذهب with the pound. Do you understand that? الذهب بالذهب. So the dhahab is to be bought by dhahab. Okay? You could buy it with silver. And here, this paper, they call it that because it's got the basis of the dhahab, because the foundation of that paper is dhahab, isn't it? I'm not really sure if it's not anymore or not, but there is big shubha in it. So if you want to open a shop, please don't make it a gold shop. And don't invest in, dhahab. You want to keep your money in dhahab and gold because you are scared that the money is going to be vanished, like in India. The guy just closed the country and he had cancelled one of those notes. He's got 1,000 in India. How much? 1,000? They've gone, finished. They're worth draft paper, only for 5 rupees. Okay, all this money's gone. So but you can't cancel gold. Can you cancel gold? You can't just say gold's cancelled. Okay, we'll go to another company and sell it to someone else. Because gold is gold. It's got the price. The price is in the gold, not in the paper whom you made me think this £1 costs such and such from the dollar. It's all a convention. And up and down the dollar and the pound. Oof. The pound is up and down, it's like unbelievable. Uncontrollable. I would not really, our Shaykh Al-Albani says, keep away from it. Keep away from being sarraf, which is the exchanger of money. Don't exchange money. Because, again, so if you need to make sarf yourself, you exchange, but don't work into that. You have lots of shubuhat in it. And I'm not going to go into details, but as I said, lots of shubuhat. وَالذَّهَبُ بِالذَّهَبِ يَدًا بِيَدْ هَاءً بِهَاء. Now,
I've heard some people give lectures, they recite the ayat. What's the rule of that?
I've heard some lectures where they recite the ayat when they're quoting the ayat. And do you relax when they recite the ayat, or you don't relax? Do you feel it right, or you don't feel it right? Imagine that Shaykh Al-Albani is giving a talk. And he's now quoting an ayah, and he says, Alif Lam Mim. What happens to your idea regarding the scholar? Do you understand what I'm saying? You don't find scholars do like this. You never heard scholars do like this. It's always the dua who likes to capture the people not by their talks, but by their melodies. And they have got some shabah, meaning like some similarity of those Shia, will capture the hearts. I'm not saying the Shia, capture the hearts with the tunes, with the melodies. They tell them lies, and they start saying, I'm going to give you a big Bahrani. And then he's got a big towel showing that he's crying a lion. And then woof. And when they cry, all of them crying, and he's like, A'udhu Billah, Shaitan. So I would say the Da'i is not supposed to do that. It's supposed to be quoting the ayah as a quotation. But when he recites the Quran, he's one now, I want to give you a session of recitation. The Da'i himself. This is, I will give you, but not to recite quotation of the ayat into his talk, like when the Prophet ﷺ, he was talking about the journey of the believer in front of the companions. Okay, and then he comes to the moment when the soul of the believer will be put down to join the body. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would say, فَرِشُوهُ مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ وَالْبِسُوهُ مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ وَافْتَحْلَهُ بَابًا مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ. And also, the Prophet said, and then he said, قال ويثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, He did not say that with a melody. He did not say it with tartil. He said it like normal way. So we say it as the Prophet ﷺ. Otherwise, in Khutbah al-Hajj, they're going to be saying what? Same verses, which is quotation in the Khutbah al-Hajj. We never heard our scholars, when they do the Khutbah al-Hajj, they start, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ttaqullah. And you've heard it in Muslim Khatib as well. True or not? Some of the Khatib do it. Unfortunately, it's not right. This is not the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. These are quotation, not recitation. So we recite them as they are. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Not with a melody. Now.
So this about the intercession of Quran in the grave, slightly off topic. Is this intercession after the intercession of Quran by Quran in the grave?
Yeah.
Is that after the question and answer? Anything specific?
The intercession is not in the grave. You misquoted me. It's in the Jannah there. Alright? So on the Jannah he will be his shafi'ah. The Quran and the Siyam on the day of resurrection, they will intercede for you. Alright? In Arasat Yawm al-Qiyamah. As for in the grave, is only that person who will represent your deed. If it's good deeds, you will be good looking, nice smelling, with nice clothes. If you are bad and evil, you'll be evil looking, very bad clothes, and very bad smell. But on the day of resurrection, those things will intercede for you. Intercession. The Quran, the Siyam, all your ibadah will be interceding for you. The believers, if you have a cousin or so as a martyr, he might intercede for you as well. Okay, that was all intercession that will be in Arasat Yawm al-Qiyamah. And
Can you raise your voice and say part of the ayah and recite ayah? And although not changing the melody, can you raise the voice? Is that part of the ayah?
can I raise my voice? What do you mean? You mean leading the prayer on my own or what was
I will leave it going on.
Why do you want to raise up your voice in
So for instance, somebody gets emotionally invested in the recitation.
Yeah, if it is natural, nobody can say anything. When you say me this question, it looks like, a person who is trying to do it deliberately. So why would he raise up his voice in some words? It reminds me as well that some people, when they talk as well, they put things deliberately there, they think they are scholars. And they put words where they're not there. For example, when you listen to Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, sometimes he says, when he talks, وَقَدْ قَالُوا نَعَمْ وَقَدْ قَالُوا نَعَمْ, he should put the word na'am. This is a habit from Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah. So somebody will go, no knowledge, can even read the Fatiha. When he keeps talking to the people, yes, and I've heard na'am, he's speaking English with them. Na'am, 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 yeah, what do you think na'am, yeah? Do you think you're a scholar, mashallah? Where is na'am you putting it in? You want to show that you're a scholar? So this na'am is not allowed. So this person who is making, raising up the voice, if it happens, like Shaykh Ibn's this, sometimes when you're reciting, you find he does not raise up his voice, he just goes a bit millimeters to the microphone. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Goes just a bit to the microphone is MashaAllah. He glorifies it. And it's part of his melody. Okay, it's part of his melody. So that's no problem, it's kind of natural. But to emphasize that, for example, Allah! What is that? And I'm saying this because I've heard one person was reciting like this. He was reciting like this. He was leading us in the prayer like this. Allah! We almost laughed in the prayer. Allah, I can't forget that old man when he led us in the prayer. Can't forget his name. No! Yeah, you almost laughed in the prayer. That is not really right to recite your voice like this way. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.